Well, hello everybody, this is Marcelo Vignali, and today we're going to cover from pencil to ink. So I'm going to show you some of the tools, and you don't have to get anything really expensive. This is a disposable mechanical pencil, but you can see how that works with a simple twist, and a kneaded eraser. Now, it isn't that you just need the eraser, it's that you knead it with your hands, and you can see that it has, because it's pliable, you can shape it as per whatever shape you need in order to get into little crevices and things like that. And the purpose of, in the same way that you knead dough, you need this particular eraser, and you want to go ahead and warm it up in your hands, and that makes it a lot more effective. And a white latex eraser, and we're going to be using that a little later on. Now we're going back to the kneaded eraser, and I'm showing you, I'm taking the kneaded eraser and I'm shaping it and getting it nice and warm, and I start to give it a particular shape. I'm rolling it like a little cylinder, and now I start rolling over the pencil that I've already completed of this particular character that we're going to be inking. Now I'm knocking back the graphite. I'm not erasing it. If I actually drag this eraser over my drawing, I erase it, but I'm not doing that. I'm simply lifting up some of the graphite. So you can see the usefulness of a kneaded eraser. It's funny because people don't really tell you how to use a kneaded eraser until you've had the experience and you're building the knowledge, and you can see how much graphite it ends up picking up, and you simply knead it, all that graphite, back into the eraser, and the eraser is ready to use again, and it will not smear on your drawings if you continue to knead it like that. Once the eraser starts getting black, you simply replace it and get a new one. But you can see the next step is to take the ink brush. Now I'm going to speed up the video so I don't bore you with my inking. But you can also see with this particular brush pen that I'm letting the brush work for me. I'm not fighting it. I'm not trying to have it do something that doesn't normally do. I'm using the strength of how when you press down on it, it's going to give you a thicker ink, and then also the placement of my hand allows it to work very much like a calligraphy pen as I start laying in my inks. Another thing is that when you're inking something, I thought it would be important to go ahead and stress to all of you that sometimes we think we do the drawing, and once we do the drawing and we start to ink, now we're tracing our lines. This actually is the wrong way to think about it. If you think about it in that way, that now you're tracing your drawing, you're going to run into trouble. You're going to run into your drawings where they look like they've been traced. The lines don't really have the power that your drawing did. The way you avoid that is not by tracing your lines. You trace your lines, you're going to get that trace effect. What you want to do is you want to make sure that now when you're inking with the pen, you're actually drawing with the pen. You're not tracing a line. You're actually trying to redraw the drawing with your ink. And I think that that's a distinction that shows up in the final result. One of the manners you can see in which I'm using the ink line, I'm using it in these very sort of small strokes, but you can also see that I'm using my wrist for some of these things, for little tiny things like the little fingers. I'm moving the tips of my finger, I'm using my wrist, but then you can also see on some of these longer strokes, I'm actually using my arm to ink. You can see that my arm is not resting on the paper for some of these longer strokes. And here is another thing to take into consideration. You can see I'm moving the paper in order to get a better angle that my arm is going to make a line for. I start to motion out where that line is going to go, and then I make my line. Here's another tip. When you're doing your line, set a target. Say, this is where I need to go. Don't watch where the brush is. Watch where the brush is going to go. If you stop and you're trying to pay attention to where the brush is at that particular moment, what you're going to end up doing is that you're going to end up getting a wobbly line because you're paying too much attention, you're going too slow. Best thing to do is to have an idea about where you want to go. Set a target, and the target is in your pencil drawing, and set that target and then move your hand to meet that target and keep your eye on the target. Now, once I've gotten it to a certain point, it's also important that you want to go back in, and some of these things like details and things like that are very hard to try and capture, you want to save that for later. I knew that I was going to have this sort of complicated design inside the shirt, and I didn't want to draw that, erase it, and then have to draw it over again. So I knew that once I started inking and my hand was brushing over the top of the paper, I was going to lose that drawing. So what I did, I left the shirt empty. I knew that I was going to be coming back into it. And once I got the drawing to a certain level, I went back in and I redrew what it is that I wanted, and I started moving in with my inks at that point. I think that sometimes when we had a bunch of detail to a drawing and then we have to redraw it again, it adds just another step, and sometimes you don't get it right, and adds a level of frustration, and you can avoid some of that with a little bit of careful planning. But again, you can see that I don't want to trace my drawing. What I want to do is I want to redraw my drawing, this time using ink. And you see that the drawing has all this vitality that the pencil drawing originally had. I know a lot of times people say, like, oh my gosh, the pencil drawing looks so much better. As soon as I tried to ink my drawing, the drawing started to fall apart, or just didn't have that vitality that that my original pencil had. And I don't think that that's the fault of ink or the process of inking something, but I think sometimes it's our technique. And our technique in this case would be that we're no longer focused on drawing, we're focused on tracing. So naturally your drawing is going to look like it's been traced. Now, when you're doing your inks, you want to have a certain level of clarity. So you can see that line drawings have a function, and the function is that they're trying to create a delineation between spaces. So you can see that there's a thicker line that's around her outside. This creates that silhouette effect where we can see a clear distinction of of her shape, and then also of individual shapes. You can see that some of the hair shapes, they work within the boundaries of a larger design, and then some of the other hair shapes start to fracture out and they create a different shape, because I'm trying to build volume inside the hair as opposed to using the same lines all over, and then you end up with this flattening out effect. And you can see here that because I'm using different line widths and grouping the hair into groupings, that it continues to create a lot of vitality with a very minimal amount of line work. And you can see here, I mean, I'm doing almost this entire, well, actually I'm going to be doing this entire drawing. And the purpose of this is to do an entire drawing with this single brush pen. I don't go back in, because sometimes you think like, oh, did the artist use a pen for this and a brush for this? No. You can develop the skills, and you can develop the hand-eye coordination to work on to do it all with one particular brush. Once I get to a certain level, I start to erase the drawing. I go back in with my kneaded eraser. Make sure that your drawing is dry. Different papers will dry the inks at a different speed. Make sure you don't start smearing your ink with your eraser. It's not going to pick up everything, and this is where the latex eraser is going to come in. That once you try to pick up as much graphite as you can with the kneaded eraser, the latex eraser will come back in and erase some of these things that you weren't able to get with your kneaded eraser. Be careful, because if you don't do the kneaded eraser first, you will smear it with the latex eraser. The final inked product is something that you can have in a comic book. It holds color very easily, and I hope that you've all enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you very much.